Thursday, January 10th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I'd like to talk about the dollar index, and some recent comments by the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney about the dollar's status as a reserve currency and the Chinese RMB or yuan challenge to the dollar. And I'll also update my viewers on a video I did almost a year ago. It was entitled, What March 26, 2018 Will Mean to the Petrodollar. And that's one of my best videos. I've got over 100,000 views. And why the March 26th date? Well, that's when the Chinese launched the Petro Yuan oil contract at the International Energy Exchange in Shanghai. And I'll update you on how that that contract is doing, that futures contract. And I will kind of refresh my old viewers and my new viewers what I think about what will really happen to the petrodollar. A lot of people think it could, it means it will implode overnight. Does it mean that the dollar dropping now, this is the end of the dollar? No, none of that. Things are more gradual. So before I go into the dollar, the Petro Yuan, Bank of England, Carney's comments, I'll quickly look at what the markets are doing this morning. I'm a little later today. Got up a little later, but still fairly early. Just before 8:30 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold at 1296.20, up just under $3. The low's been 1291.50 and the high 1297.30. Yeah, and gold is fairly strong and the dollar's fairly weak. I would say one of the major reasons, if you want to look at it on a fundamental basis, is what happened yesterday in terms of the Fed's, the FOMC minutes of the last meeting that came out yesterday. And it showed that the Federal Reserve, the FOMC, is ready to stop cutting rates. It looks like, stop raising rates. It looks like they're going to wait at least until June, and maybe even after June, if they're going to hike again. And it seems like Fed officials are saying we could even cut again. So they have no idea what the economy is going to do. And it's normal that the dollar is turning, because from a month or 6 weeks ago, from thinking that they're going to keep raising rates. I mean, Goldman Sachs was calling for 4 rate hikes this year. And now that's all out of the window. The ECB has had to, how can I say, they stopped their QE in December. And a few months ago, they said that rates would stay negative as they are for the euro up until the summer this year. So things are switching around, and it's not surprising that the dollar is coming under pressure. And I think the trade negotiations with China has also hurt. Maybe the Chinese have gotten what they want, and they've allowing the yuan to appreciate against the dollar. So silver 15.75, up 1 cent. Silver has kind of underperformed the last day or so, couple of days against gold. The high's been 15.80, the low 15.68. The Dow futures is down 180, which is interesting because even though the dollar is weakened, we're seeing this rally fizzle out. There's not much anymore that could help the Dow. I think it's all been priced in, so we could see the Dow come back down, in my opinion. So it's down about 180 or 0.75%, 23,700. The S&P is down 21 or 0.82%. NASDAQ 100 futures down 62 or just under 1% at 65.38. The pound this morning is fairly weak. down 1/4%, 127.55. The euro unchanged against the dollar, 115.44. And the dollar is dropping against the yen this morning, down 1/4% at 107.93. The dollar yuan down, dollars down almost 0.5%. It's at 678. And I'll quickly show you this chart here of the dollar yuan. It's a weekly chart. And it's interesting how it looks like we formed a double top there in this chart, and we're really coming off now. And I suspect that's one of the reasons why the yen is appreciating as well, because the Japanese are okay if the Chinese currency appreciates. They will let their currency appreciate because it's a major competitor for exports. Crude oil back up above 50. I mean, it got up above 52 yesterday. This morning, WTI is down 1.3% at 51.86. And Brent is still above 60. 10-year yield, 269, down 2 basis points. So bond market still pointing to weakness economically, I would say. So the dollar's reserve currency status, and to clarify, it's not only the dollar that's a reserve currency, but it is the major reserve currency, of course. I think countries keep about, in total, the reserve assets in the world, the dollar makes up about 60 to 65%. I'm not sure exactly, but it is dropping, of course. The euro is a reserve currency. Even pound sterling is still a reserve currency. And gold, of course, is a reserve asset. It hasn't been used as a currency for a while, of course. Bank of England's governor said, Bank of England, this is a headline from Reuters, Bank of England's Carney sees China's yuan as possible reserve currency. And he points out as well that it could take a while, just like I said in my video from March last year, that what March 26, 2018 will mean to the petrodollar. And that date was when they launched that yuan oil contract. Petrodollar, of course, was created after President Nixon left the gold, closed the gold window and took the dollar off gold backing from the Bretton Woods system. He tore apart the Bretton Woods agreement, and they had to find something to back the dollar with. The deal with the Saudis, basically saying, you price your oil in dollars and we'll protect your kingdom, militarily, we'll help you develop. Yeah, but you need to price your oil in dollars, and you got to take those dollars and recycle them into the U.S. financial system to keep demand for dollars so that the Americans could continue to borrow. And I even think the Americans were behind the oil embargo. I mean, if you read Lindsey Williams' book, The Energy Non-Crisis, they were shutting off pipelines in the U.S. from the west to the east in the U.S. prior to the oil embargo. So it was, and why do they do that? Well, because if you do the oil embargo, this crisis, blame it, of course, on the Saudis and the problems in the Middle East. The oil price rises. What does that mean? More dollar revenues, more demand by the Saudis for dollars, and the Americans can inflate the system. That's how the petrodollar was born. But now China is challenging the petrodollar. And I would say is one of the major reasons why we've had these trade disputes and why there's so much talk about war, which hopefully I don't think will happen. I hope not, because China also needs to protect the shipping lanes, because people are going to be shipping oil to Shanghai now, because China, people will trading with China. They will be taking delivery of that oil, paying in yuan. Maybe China will be paying yuan, taking the oil. So they have to protect the sea routes, Southeast Asia, China, the China Sea, and of course America has been there since the end of World War II. Its presence in Japan as a base. And in the video, of course, I said it's not going to happen overnight. The dollar is not going to disappear overnight. And it's just like Mark Carney said, the United States economy surpassed the British economy in the late 19th century. But the dollar only became the reserve currency after World War I. Do I think it's going to take that long for China? No, I think it's going to be quicker. It could be, in the next 5-10 years, maybe even less. The other day there was an article about what Ray Dalio at his hedge fund wrote about China, and the progress China has made in 40 years is quite amazing. And I'm not judging the Chinese politically or anything. I'm just looking at the numbers. And I think people underestimate how quickly and powerful they're becoming economically, the Chinese. And Mark Carney, I think he's right. The Chinese yuan will be a very important currency. And he notes that doesn't see the SDR as being part of the new reserve currency, nor gold. But I disagree with him. I think gold will come back into the system because the Chinese know that. Why have they been accumulating so much gold? They know that eventually, when the dollar loses more and more of its status, when it loses more and more of its value, that they will need to have something very creditworthy and with a reputation of thousands of years, and the Chinese know that. China right now, if there's an implosion, a collapse of the dollar system, they're going to be hurt as well. So that's why they need to accumulate the gold. And why are they going to be hurt? Well, because they have a lot of these Federal Reserve notes, trillions. And the reason Mark Carney says that gold, it's like asking, a turkey if they want to vote for Christmas. Of course, a central banker or a politician is going to say that gold is no good because it disciplines central bankers and bankers. It disciplines politicians. They can't spend all the, to pay money to buy votes. And this is another, interesting subject. And I watched a video, and I'll put the link to this video up in the cards and in the description. And it's from November, but I hadn't seen it. There's so much on the internet. And I know this guy, Grant Williams. He's quite good. And he talks a lot about the things I've spoken about. But he gives, this latest video of his, I find it interesting. And he talks about why, the politicians, the bankers will of course say they're against the gold standard. They will say that it won't work. So I recommend this video. It's called The Fall of the US Dollar. Is the Return to a Gold Standard Inevitable? And the gist of it is that it won't come through reform. It will come out of necessity, out of when this system implodes. When it will, we don't know, of course, but it will, because fiat money systems never last forever. And I don't think the Chinese will follow Mark Carney's advice. What are you going to back a new reserve currency with? Well, there's only going to be one that's not political and has been the standard of value for thousands of years. That's gold. The other thing Mark Carney said, which is quite interesting, and I quote here, it says, as the world reorders, this disconnect between real and financial is likely to reduce. And in this process, other reserve currencies may emerge. In the first instance, I would expect these will be existing national currencies such as the RMB, Chinese currency. The interesting part of this comment is the disconnect between real and financial assets. And I think he means basically the fact that commodities, precious metals are so undervalued against the stock market, bonds. He says it's likely to reduce. So all that means is the reset, I think. So there you have it. Mark Carney is even admitting that. What about the Shanghai, the International Energy Exchange? Well, I've just looked at the latest data here. The front month contract is the March contract, as you can see there. SC, that stands for sour crude. 19, that's the year. 03, the month. And it's traded 636,000 contracts. That's massive. That's a sign that this futures contract is working. And how do I know that? Well, I work as a futures and options brokers for over 20 years. And if a futures contract, when it's launched, you will know after a month or two if it will be successful. And after less than a year, trading over 500,000 lots, that's very significant. Open interest is fairly small still. The total there is about, I would say, 55,000 if you add all the different contracts. I haven't changed my mind about, how things are going to evolve. It's not going to be overnight. The dollar is going to disappear. Just like the British pound hasn't disappeared, even though it's not the reserve currency anymore. These things take time. So now let's have a look at some of the charts because the dollar index is not looking good at all. First of all, I'll show you a weekly chart going back to the high in January of 2017, which was around 103. Let's have a look. 82. Recently, we almost went back up to 98, but look how it's keeling over now. Longer term, the trend for the dollar index is lower. I think the next low will be somewhere between 60 and 70. And of course, the dollar index, as you can see here, the major weighting of the dollar index is the euro, 57.6%, Japanese yen, 13.6, pound sterling, 11.9, Canadian dollar, Swedish krona, Swiss franc. So the Chinese yuan is not in the dollar index, but as you saw earlier, it's also, the dollar is moving down against that as well. And the other one I wanted to look at is the euro. Of course, is the major component of the dollar index. The euro also on January 1st had its 20th birthday, and it's still going, right? Many people have predicted the end of the euro, the collapse of the euro, but it's still around. And I just wanted to show this chart. It's a weekly chart, and back, let's see, in August of 2018, we broke this neckline and this head and shoulder, and the euro looked really like it was going to go down quite far, maybe to 105, but it's defied all the odds, and it didn't go straight back up straight away, but look at it now. We just broken back above that neckline, and it's looking like, the death of the euro is far away still. Maybe ironically, the fact that Europe, the Eurozone countries don't have like a national treasury department that can issue bonds and supersede each country, the sovereignty of each country. Maybe that's a plus for the euro, because that means they don't have. It's not as easy for the Eurozone countries to issue that like the U.S. Treasury, which is one institution. Ironically, that might be helping the euro. Even though I'm not saying, of course, that I think the euro is a good currency. It's a fiat currency, just like the dollar, the yuan, for now. They're all sinking against the real, the currency of kings, which is gold. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Also click on the little bell to get notified of my new videos. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.